Welcome to the EdTech Podcast, coming to you live from BETT. We're spending the day on the show floor, meeting people having real connections and capturing what's exciting, challenging and changing across education and technology right now. Let's see who's up. And welcome back. We are day one at BETT and we have the wonderful Lord Jim Knight with us. Hello, Lord Jim Knight. How are you?
I'm really well. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you. And I know that you've just arrived, but we are here obviously at the kind of the Send Village. We keep talking about the importance of having that here, and it's a really big part of BETT this year. But what sorts of things are you really looking forward to seeing when you're wandering around?
Well, as always, when I come to BETT, I'm looking for how technology can help teachers and learners and solve their problems. We've got a number of them at the moment. We've got all the big chat about AI. I'm sure there's going to be lots of that. I've already had a conversation with someone from Sweden who's pitching that his AI solution is all EU hosted so that we can get away from our reliance on the United States and the United States tech and all of that. So that, some of the politics of today are here just in the way people are talking about the technology. It's great to be by the Send Theatre and in this part of BETT, because obviously with all of the chat about phones in schools and the consultation that was launched yesterday, making it essentially banning phones in schools except for certain dispensations around SEND, exploring about that would be useful, and how we can use tech more widely, not just smartphones, but tech more widely to support inclusion, and that's something I've been thinking about a fair amount. And then, is there anything new that anyone's doing?
Yeah, which is exciting, right?
Yeah.
This is where we should see that hub of excitement and curiosity of all these new tools that, as you just mentioned earlier, hopefully are there to help us, right, and not hinder.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think amongst school leaders, there's a fair amount of skepticism, I guess, around people come and sell them things, and some of them are really good at selling them things, but do they actually need it? Budgets are tight. So it's got to have an impact that's not a nice to have. It's got to feel a much more essential than it has done maybe in years past.
And I agree. I think as well, now that systems are becoming much cleverer, for want of a better word, they are becoming much more interoperable. There is an ease of being able to say, actually, I want a holistic understanding of my students, and I need your system to work with my systems and with my schools. And I think that's really important. It should be getting simpler, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the promise is there, particularly with artificial intelligence. We've got old-fashioned artificial intelligence that machine learning learns about the users, learns about the teachers, learns about the learners, learns about their context. That's pretty reliable. It doesn't hallucinate. We've now got generative AI that comes along and disrupts it all and gets everyone talking and has a great promise to be able to understand individual learners too and do magical things with them. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really importantly brings us back that you mentioned something earlier about phones and bans in schools, and it's a huge topic globally at the moment. And I'm really glad about the dispensation in terms of SEN, because I know in the US that caused huge issues in states where it was taken out, and actually students in the Middle East would say students with determination, but students with SEND really struggled and suffered because actually you're taking a lifeline away from them. How do you see in the UK this kind of working? I feel like banning in a school is sort of putting a sticking plaster over certain elements of this, because when they go home, they're still using it. Where is the control? Where are the measures?
Yeah, I mean, I had a meeting with Olivia Bailey, one of the education ministers, yesterday to try and understand it. And I think it's important to look at what they're consulting on social media alongside what the new guidance that they've issued that's much stricter for schools around smartphones in schools. Because clearly most of the harm is accessed on social media by children, and they are addictive, and that makes smartphones addictive. And if we can, one of the elements in the consultation around whether or not to ban smartphones for under 16s includes instead, or whether or not they do something to force the social media companies to make the algorithms less addictive.
Yeah.
And that would help all of us.
Absolutely.
And there's a study out of the University of Sussex today that's saying the thing that we spend most of our time doing is scrolling on our phones, and the thing that we hate the most is the time we spend scrolling on our phones. So we all need help. It's not just children. Look, I really hope that as we make a policy, as schools implement it, we keep talking to children, because in the end, Ian Russell from the Molly Rose Foundation, he was on the media this weekend saying that a month in Australia, they've had a peak in calls into their children's helplines around isolated people, particularly neurodiverse children and so on, who rely on the connection of social media and now feel really isolated because they can't use it.
Yeah.
We've got to understand those things so that we can mitigate them and find different ways. And hopefully, I would like to see us end up on the social media side where we accept that there are some really harmful platforms and there are some platforms that aren't so bad. And that we have a differential approach to that so that we can still have children using technology, using it to connect socially, getting some of the good out of it, finding out what's going on in the world. We're about to give votes at 16. They need to be informed. Give them all of that, but take the harmful stuff away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder whether there's a piece being thought around about the parental use, though. Often, you've just spoken about the fact that the thing we hate is scrolling and the thing that we do the most is scrolling. One of the biggest pieces of research that always consistently comes out is the fact that children's biggest bugbear is that their parents will say to them, stop doing X, and then they go and do it themselves, or potentially are even distracted whilst telling them because they're on their phone. How does all of this link in with that? Do you see there being a remit of support for parents to sort of say, actually, there's a whole wellbeing balance in your home and in your own life as well?
I was pleased last week that guidance has been published for parents of under fives about the use of technology and the use of phones. That needs to include the point that you're making about what behaviors we model as parents. My wife has just bought herself a dumb phone, a Nokia, because she doesn't want to give it to our 14-year-old until she's used it herself and got a sense of, well, what does it mean? How much of a problem is it for me going about my ordinary life if all I've got is a thing that rings and texts and plays Snake, probably?
Also quite addictive.
So, and I think that's what we want to encourage in parents, is that sense of we've got to model the behaviors that we want. In our home, we don't allow devices at the dinner table. We don't allow them upstairs in the bedrooms at night. We try and model as a family behaviors, not, doing one thing and asking our children to do something else.
Absolutely. And it's easy. I think it's one of those things that I always get people say to me, oh, well, it's because you're in edtech. It's like, well, no, it's because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I do really similar things. And actually our children, now that they're older, will call us out. So, no phones at the dinner table, and say things like that. We take a pack of playing cards around with us everywhere we go to be able to do those things. And it really does take effort to disconnect sometimes. I wonder around that inclusive element, though. My fear is from all this screen time debate and the debate around mobile phones and social media is, one, a slight lack of naivety around, do we just not understand the real positives, and are we really making a big issue of things that are negative too much? But also, are we then isolating ed tech from the conversation and just blanketing and saying it's all bad?
I think there's a real danger of that. There's a movement of some parents saying all screen time is bad, like everything, in moderation. The fact that everyone around the world is using this technology, they're using it to work out how to get from A to B, they're working out how to pay for things when they get there, they're working out using them all the time. It's because they've got a utility, but we also overuse them. I've now reading real books printed on paper because I accepted my own problems of overusing technology and, again, modeling the right things. So look, we're all learning, but I am really worried that there is this sort of moral panic about what technology is doing to us, that AI is taking over everything. And then we're then looking for sort of silver bullets that are called ban this and ban that. And there's a more sophisticated, more rational answer that can do good for everyone because some of this technology is really effective. It's very powerful. It can help all of us, and some of us it can really, really help level them up and get them into a place where they can compete with everybody else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think in my mind, my own adolescent brain says ban, and I go, how can I get around this? Which is exactly what our children will do. And we actually heard, in Australia, a lot of parents going, oh, well, my child hacked it within 24 hours and these things. And again, statistically, parents go, it's inevitable. So we'll just let them. And then really, are any of these bans going to do what we need them to do, which is support that balance and that?
Yes, children, I mean, we saw when the new Ofcom regime around porn and other things no longer being available for children came in July, we saw a big spike in VPN downloads. Now, if we banned children off social media, we would see, I think, a significant amount of VPN use. And what that would then mean is we would expose children to all of the dangers that the Online Safety Act has effectively dealt with around access to porn, around access to suicide and self-harm material, ideation, all of that stuff. And so, we've got to be really careful about the unintended consequences. People would then say, well, why don't we ban children from having VPNs? Well, you can carry on that sort of arms race, but I've got a VPN on my phone that has been recommended to me by Parliament to protect my personal devices against cyber attack.
Yeah.
So it's to make me safer. Yeah. Should we deny children safety?
Exactly.
It's a difficult context that we need to try and talk through and walk through with parents so that they can understand how to do things. And I would love here at BETT to see some of the sellers with solutions to, well, how do I make it easier for parents to control the devices of their children? How do I make it easier for schools to control the devices that are on their premises? I checked with Olivia Bailey yesterday. The guidance that's come out doesn't preclude schools using a technical approach, so they could geofence the school, or they could install, as it was 3 or 4 apps that I know of, that can lock down and sort of dumb down the phone, if you like, while it's on school premises. And those technologies will get better and better. I mean, ultimately, I think Apple and Google, the two providers of the mobile internet, they're the people who should fix this for us. Why don't they give us something for schools and something for parents?
Yeah, I agree. I lots of conversations recently around mobile device management systems that actually do the home and the school.
Yeah.
Which is always the bit that the conversation around, especially in the Middle Eastern schools I've been working with, where parents are reluctant to allow you to manage the device because it's their device, because then their child can't do what they need to at home. And actually now we are seeing that sophistication of actually, when at school, these are the boundaries, these are the remits, this is why we have that system. But actually then we unlock it and you have access to be able to control that screen time. Now the choice is whether the parent will do that or not.
Yeah, and some will do it assiduously. I delve into the bloody iOS settings on the iPhones to try and make sure that Coco's usage is as safe as I can get it. And I suffer the constant screen time requests that I get as a result.
I get lots of those.
But it's hard. You've got to really try to get into it, and you don't get it right first time. And there are apps to make that easier. And we just need to popularize those, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's that knowledge. It's making everybody educationally aware of why and the purpose and having that confidence in it. I think one of the questions, though, to you as well, what are you going to be speaking about here specifically if you're talking or on any panels?
Well, I'm talking a lot at the moment inevitably about artificial intelligence in teaching and learning and in assessment. I think there's something really exciting about the possibilities of using it for assessment. It's often accused of being the tail that wags the dog in education. And there's some truth in that. If teachers know that the technology is going to be used in the endpoint assessment, they'll make sure the technology is used in the classroom. But beyond that, one of the things I'd love to explore with the assessment companies is the viva. So it's one of the most traditional forms of assessment that we've got is orally presenting what you know. Now, that's really resource intensive because you've got to have one-to-one assessor, and they've got to be an expert assessor to be able to make a fair judgment about. My hunch is that AI could really help with that, could help us be able to do vivas at scale. And then we can do assessments that are so much more meaningful in many ways than the large sports hall paper and pen tests that we do at the moment. So I'd love to see us move on that. I'd love to see essentially the vision of the virtual teaching assistant get closer and closer so that teachers have got more support, so that they're able to understand what's going on with every one of the individuals that they teach and start to chase the vision of wrapping education around individual children rather than having them standardized around a notion of a standardized child sitting a standardized test, having been in a standardized classroom and consumed a standardized textbook. We're here by the SEND stuff, and that standardization is a catastrophe for England.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, even I was just thinking then when you were talking, when I taught in the UK, I taught every single Key Stage 3 class design technology. I had to know every single child's name, and I only taught them for 6 weeks or 12 weeks of a year. And then I had to report on them and things like this, tools like this that can really genuinely tell you those insights are so valuable. I think being a hands-on subject was something very much that helped me because that allowed me to go, I can see that and I link that to that child. But there are so many subjects that don't have that ability to do that.
Yeah.
And it levels the playing field in terms of being able to find the information, being able to resource that child, being able to really make sure that they can have as much empowerment as possible in their own education, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of issues around pupil engagement. Got some issues around teacher engagement too. But the answer to pupil engagement, and the science is really clear, is agency. Yeah, so you empower children to have some control over their learning, and then they become much more engaged in their learning. What that in turn does is it means that they're likely to be more effective lifelong learners because they feel like learning is something that they can get a grip of. It's not just something that's done unto them. We are moving into a world of a 50-year working life, of technology rapidly de-skilling and the need to then reskill constantly.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be an effective lifelong learner. So we've got to entrench those habits in school. And so I talk a lot about all of that because, and I think technology can massively help us to deliver all of that. Hence being here and hence being somewhat frustrated at the talk being about technology being all evil and we've got to get rid of it out of children's life.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly why I'm very passionate about trying to change that narrative as well, because there are so many benefits. It's like anything in the world, I love pizza and I like a bit of chocolate cake. I'm not going to sit and eat it all day long, every single day. Everything has to be done in moderation. And I think it's that scaremongering that worries me, that those amazing things that can really engage and empower and allow children to have that personalized experience. We will not get away from the fact that we have overcrowded classrooms. How can we help that child for them to know that they are heard and they are seen? Yeah. We can understand them better. And we have so many resources at our fingertips.
Yeah. And we can also flex time better. If thinking about that standardization problem, some children's differences mean that they need more time. And yet we have a standardized timetable. So we can flex the time more. If technology would allow us to use home more flexibly, as well as use school more flexibly, to manage the resources of learning spaces and teachers in learning spaces and which children are with which children more effectively, that can do things that the human mind struggles to compute all the different variables. These are all things we should be chasing after in pursuit of that really important vision that's coming from government and elsewhere about a much more inclusive education system.
Yeah. And hopefully there are some people here listening today, or people who are on stands with some of that technology that can really help to bridge that gap. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today.
Always
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
This episode is supported by Edruption. Edruption works with schools, trusts, governments, and education organisations to design inclusive, accessible, and sustainable digital systems, moving strategy from paper into practice in ways that genuinely work for people. From digital audits and 360 reviews to coaching for digital and AI leaders, governance frameworks, and safeguarding first implementation, Edruption helps organizations build and refine digital ecosystems that are secure, purposeful, and future ready. Not only that, but they're Canva trainer partners too, supporting schools to embed creativity, accessibility, and consistency at scale, not as add-ons, but part of everyday life and inclusive practice. So if you're navigating AI readiness, inspection pressure, staff capability, or simply looking into bringing clarity in an increasingly complex digital landscape, Edruption is here to support that journey. Explore their work at edruption.com, empowering change and meeting you where you are. Welcome to BETT Day 2. We have the fantastic YouHQ team with us, John and Jez. Guys, would you like to tell everybody listening all over the world what YouHQ is and what you guys are doing here?
Thanks, Philippa. Yeah, it's great to be here. So my name's Jez, co-founder of YouHQ with John. YouHQ is a wellbeing and personal development platform. We've been working with schools in the UK to start with, but now a lot of them international, as you know. And it's been an amazing sort of 3 or 4 years to see how the product's evolved. We're now offering more services, doing more workshops with schools, with teachers, with students and parents. And yeah, it's been a great journey. And I can't remember how many BETTs we've been to, but this feels like 4 or 5 maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think I've been to more, but exhibiting and being here actually with the app and with YouHQ is probably about 4 years. But yeah, it's been good.
Amazing. And so tell us a little bit. I was just saying earlier, you are no longer a startup, are you?
No, it's a difficult one because sometimes I feel like we are, but we're probably more scale up now. So we're in nearly 200 schools internationally, from schools from Chicago to South Korea. We've got a really strong presence in the UAE now. I feel like we've really got product market fit for international schools sector and the prep school sector. So yeah, that's sort of our target market. And yeah, I think more of a scale up, really. We're trying to scale.
When does a startup become a scale up?
This was the question.
Is there a definitive answer to that question?
I feel like that's maybe one we'll throw out to all our listeners. Maybe someone can help us out
There
there.
probably is, and we probably should have researched that, Jez.
Yeah. Or we'll find out.
Yeah. Can that be edited out?
I quite like this. We should start talking about dogs again as well. So tell us a little bit about what YouHQ came from. How was it born? What was the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with that. So it was my crazy idea right at the beginning. So I'm a bit of a goal setter, very much into my performance psychology. Wanted to try and create a platform where I could set my own goals, somewhere I could store my goals. I used to do it sort of yearly by yearly and write them in a notepad, and then they'd get lost somewhere. Yeah, the original plan was to try and create a platform that was a goal setting platform, but had mindfulness or being tools and stuff within it. Bumped into this friend next to me, who we went to university together sort of 20 odd years ago. And he was a teacher at the time. He said this would be great for schools. So, but probably need a wellbeing tracker survey tool in there. Young people could then, or schools could use it with their young people. They could self-reflect, do wellbeing surveys, measure impact of their wellbeing strategies, and also have all of the goal setting, all of the wellbeing skills to sort of bolster their wellbeing. And yeah, that's where I guess it started. That was sort of 2019, 2020.
Well, it was actually a uni reunion. So it was a few beers in, I think, and John had already started this idea and he'd already gone down a road of goal setting and creating an app. And I remember thinking, how is this guy doing all this stuff? And at the same time, I'd been teaching for a while, and I can't exactly remember the moment where we said this would work in schools, but it kind of evolved, didn't it? And the running joke is that it was my fault. That great idea, but it has been. And obviously, we know working with schools, like the nature of schools, is quite hard work and it can be chaotic. But I think subconsciously, we never really talk about how our struggles as parents and with our own kids has probably led us down this road a bit as well, hasn't it? Because both of, we've got kids that have found school difficult and fitting into a system, I suppose. So I think sometimes what we're thinking about is sometimes comes from us as dads as well, without necessarily talking about it like that. But that seems to be the evolution of the platform, right? From goal setting, potentially corporate, to this kind of wellbeing, mental health, and still goal setting focused school platform.
Yeah. And I think as soon as I got into schools and started meeting teachers and hearing about things, about how hard it was out there for pastoral leads, wellbeing leads, that there is a massive problem like SEND, kids' mental health. There's such a huge global problem. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. This is all going to match up perfectly. And I think that helped. And then my daughter was diagnosed autistic like 5 years ago, went through some huge issues, and she's doing well now, fortunately. But yeah, I think all of that fed into what we've developed. And I think now we're like really confident, aren't we, that we've developed something that can really help schools, help young people. And yeah, I feel like we're on the right path. I think the challenge always is, though, the schools are just overwhelmed with stuff going on, and it's how they can, how can we save them time? And I think, we're always trying to evolve the product.
So over the years, since obviously the big idea, what have been kind of some of the really big milestones that you've managed to achieve?
we always look at, we always go number of schools, don't we? Do you get that as well? When you talk to companies, like how many schools you're in? I suppose like when we tipped over 100, we went, wow, this is cool. We never really stop though, do we? We never stop and go, oh, cool. We're always going next, 150, 200. Number of schools has been good. And as we sort of hone in on 200 schools, I think the international growth's been brilliant for us, hasn't it? Because initially we thought UK, probably independent sector, but because of everything that's happened in this country now with independent schools and, with what's going on politically, it's been really interesting for us to look at what happens in other countries and how they look at well-being. And that's where, somewhere like the UAE has been really interesting for us, because without realizing it when we launched this, that specific look at well-being and the framework they've got over there and the way schools are inspected has been really cool actually for us, and to visit and see how schools work and how they embrace technology as well, and the difference between here in the UK, especially at the moment with all the news around, smartphones and technology in schools and the pushback. So yeah, there's been lots of milestones. I mean, there's probably been loads of great financial milestones as well. I don't know whether any jump out.
Yeah. So for me, I guess the biggest one was when we signed up Leicestershire County Council, which basically made our idea turn into a business, because overnight we had a few schools using the product and a few believers, but then, that was a good chunky contract, and that's 4 or 5 years in, and they keep renewing. So it's obviously it's working well. And yeah, that made what we were doing sort of worthwhile. And then I guess, the number of schools and employing people, we didn't, at the beginning it was just us, wasn't it? The founders, and now we've got a team of people. So employing people was another milestone. Yeah, we're trying to get to that magic $1 million ARR. Would be good from a financial perspective.
Amazing. And so what about children? What about the students that are using it? What kind of impact are you having right down at that level?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And we talk about it all the time. I mean, we know from the data that we collect that things like sleep has come through all the time. So how sleep impacts mood. So that's led us down a line of working with sleep experts. We're partnering with the Sleep Charity and supporting their Children's Sleep Awareness Month in February. So that's been really interesting for us. Collecting anonymous feedback's been amazing as well. So, you look at data, don't you? And that's just kind of what we're doing. We're asking schools to look at data, but behind every number, whether it's a low mood alert or a support message or a goal that's been achieved, there's a story. So unearthing those stories and talking to schools more that's the real power. When you hear a school say, we weren't aware of this student struggling, and they were, and then we connected and we gave them the help they needed, and we wouldn't have known, or it would have taken longer. That's always really powerful. And then there's all the positive psychology side as well, of kids just setting goals, achieving goals, engaging with our wellbeing framework that we launched in November. There's some super positive things going on. It's not every student is struggling with their mental health. Some kids are thriving out there and flourishing and want to learn about this stuff and really want to get into the wider world. And that's kind of what it is for us, isn't it? We want to take every student through a journey where they feel empowered. And that word agency always comes up for us, doesn't it? Give them agency over this.
Yeah. And I think what was really interesting when we first started, we came from a really positive psychology perspective, solution focus. We wanted the platform for kids to be able to set goals, which it is. But the actual sort of hook for schools is actually our platform picks up on those kids that are struggling, which we have to sort of go down the line of, because it's really powerful. But our platform is now, I actually would say it's a safeguarding tool as well as a wellbeing tool. So we are helping schools pick up on between 5 and 30 kids per 1,000 that otherwise would not be picked up on. So
it's incredible.
It is a safeguarding tool. So we never realized that when we put in the mood tracker. Jez was like, we need to put a mood tracker in this. And then suddenly that is just like kids who are shy, masking, and which loads of kids do now. Even in the small prep schools with 12 kids in a class, they're picking up on things that they wouldn't have picked up on before.
Yeah.
So yes, we have all the positive stuff and the what next, which is, I think, what makes us very unique. Yeah, that tracking side of stuff is what schools they have to do, because obviously to make safer schools, they've got to be able to do that.
And I think one of the things that I remember from that as well, very much is almost just acknowledging as well for every student that you're going to have bad days and good days, right? And actually sometimes tracking things allows you to have that awareness that you will have peaks and troughs, and that is going to be the whole of your life. Like, everybody is going to have good and bad days. So I think that's a real impact. Must have also potentially had a knock-on effect on the whole community in schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. Good days and bad days. And also what we've realised as a company is that YouHQ having impact doesn't mean every student logging in all the time and completing every feature. We used to always go, oh, are they using that feature? How good is this? But what we've realized is that students use it in totally different ways. So if one student wants to use it to reach out, communicate and connect with a member of staff, that's amazing. That's one of the main ideas. But if another student doesn't want to do that, but they still are engaging with resources, or they're learning more about what values and goals are, amazing as well. So yeah, I think there's no one size fits all with it at all, is there? It's such a huge, if you want to put it under one category of wellbeing, it's a difficult task, that, isn't it? And that's the thing we're doing now. We're trying to develop the next stage, the next version, to make it as smart and as intuitive and as good for the students to use, but as useful and time saving, like John said, for the staff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about features. What's your favourite feature, aside from the ones that maybe we've already spoken about?
Well, I guess for me, I still go down the goal setting because it's just what I use it myself. So, I review my goals every 3 months. Jez laughs, like you are like the goal geek of the world.
We've never called you the goal geek.
And maybe that's my
Can that be a new hashtag?
Yeah. But no, I think generally it's really important to self-reflect and look back at your goals. And I feel like I've done fairly well in certain things because of the way that I do, set goals. And
are you a lofty goal person, like an RKO, or are you like more of a KPI man?
Don't know either of what. I know what KPI is. I don't know what the first one was.
So basically, it's like way, way beyond what you could possibly ever imagine. But because you've kind of gone so extreme, you actually overachieve on what you would probably do if you set yourself a goal.
Well, SMART is probably where I end up going. Values, linking them to values, acceptance commitment therapy. We've got a clinical psychologist who is one of our co-founders. So I sort of go down that route, reviewing them. And then there's a function and a feature where the kids can print their goals up, and I stick them on my shower wall. I've just done them. They're on the wall.
You did say that you've changed.
On the shower wall?
Yeah, that's niche, isn't it?
That's really niche.
Yeah, but he obviously laminates
I was going to say.
That's ridiculous. He's trying to read them. He's like, what was that goal?
It's a good way to go at them, though. They will melt away.
Yeah, I do it in a way that is behind the glass. So.
But we record assemblies, send them out to our member schools, and we did one recently. And John was saying that I think you are quite a lofty, big, ambitious goal setter, business leader. You always said a million students was the benchmark, and we're getting there. But then you said you're sort of shifting a bit more towards daily, habitual, system-based goals, aren't you? So you can go like, I want 1 million students to use YouHQ, but then you've got to reverse engineer that back, and that's kind of what we're asking students to do. Like, there's no right or wrong. I wasn't that person at all. I'm not really a to-do list maker, goal setter, but I've embraced it through using the platform, because we use it ourselves, obviously, as a business, and I've found so much value in thinking carefully about values and review. It's a constant process of review, isn't it? And going, that goal I set was crazy, and I'm reviewing it and I'm going, okay, let's adapt it. And I think it's such a useful tool for wellbeing overall. I found.
Yeah. I think the whole process of wellbeing is very much, you've got to be on it all the time. It's not like I'm going to set some goals and then leave it. And that's why you have to make them live. You have to put them somewhere in your house where you look at them, because otherwise you're not accountable. Like, you need something to keep reminding you, and that's what's been really powerful for me. So yeah, I guess goal setting. You're probably more mine's self-reflection.
Well, mine's actually the wellbeing framework that we've launched. So as a former teacher, I love the idea that we're giving students an agency and not putting it all on staff. Not saying all these kids are struggling, you've got to talk to them, but going, the way YouHQ functions is students check in over time, and then the platform picks up on the key reasons for why they're feeling certain ways, and it suggests resources, and it always has. But now we've created lots of resources, including activities that are backed by PERMA, which, Philippa, is really popular in the UAE and is becoming, and is a great model for positive psychology. And actually, I love that idea that students are being suggested resources, engaging with them, learning more about them. It might not fix everything. So if we've got kids struggling with sleep, let's tell them what sleep is. Let's tell them the science behind it and how it impacts wellbeing, and the things that they can potentially look at to improve it, rather than just asking a member of staff to sort out their problems and do it for them. So I'm really passionate about that side.
Amazing. So, BETT, this is obviously not your first. We've just said that before. What sorts of things are you seeing? What are you hearing? Is there anything interesting that you've kind of, aside from YouHQ, what kind of other things have been going on?
Yeah, so I came yesterday, the first day. Actually, I did a post on it yesterday that I think 2019 was my first one, and I walked in here as a complete, didn't have any idea what I was doing, never sold to a school. I just had this idea, and I remember walking around thinking, well, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of businesses, and I still get that feeling of overwhelm when I walk into BETT because it's just so, there's so many things out there for schools to buy into and cool things like, I'm looking at looks like a Anatomanjay bed around. I don't know what that even does, but like I'm looking at it going, wow, like, what is that? Like
3D anatomy.
3D anatomy. There you go. It should say that on their thing. But yeah, I'm just looking around, just thinking there's just so much here. And I had some really good meetings yesterday. I was on the BETT stand. That was good. Lots of people. One thing I've noticed is there's more people and more stands doing their own little workshops, trying to get people involved, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
For me, I think I'm always a bit more laissez-faire, rock up, meet people, you're number one, tick. But yeah, I've got lots of people that have said they're here, and I think it's just about walking around, embracing it. When we first came, we went, let's capture loads of leads, let's convert them into sales. And I don't think BETT is necessarily that space for it. Obviously, it could be, but for our experience, it's about being here, embracing the craziness, speaking to loads of different people. We always say, you never know who you're going to meet. And we've met some people that have turned into great contracts for us. And not just that, but actually just met great people who are doing brilliant things in the space. And
yeah, and it's also like now there's so many people here that we know because we've been doing it for 5 years. So it's so many people here, but you still I walked down one of the aisles yesterday and like bumped into 2 people and it was like, that's just random. And I've not spoke to them for like 2 years. So I think it's where everybody comes. There's a really good community meeting place. And yeah, just seeing what's new.
Absolutely. I think definitely is a very community-driven education technology. Just feels like that kind of nice place where people want to share and collaborate and support each other, right? So amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show, guys. We will pop everything into the show notes.
Don't forget about Run Club.
And of course, Run Club, although I will hope that this goes out this afternoon.
Okay.
Have you been inundated?
Honestly, I can't keep up.
Because all the people that want to run at 7 o'clock in the morning.
On a Friday after being in the Fox.
YouHQ Run Club, big.
I mean, if you're not there, who are you? I mean, it's a balance of well-being and cold and good conversation.
And resilient.
Yeah,
loads of things.
Resilience.
Yeah, get yourself there.
We can put it on the tracker. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. BETT 2026 Personalised Learning matters because every learner is different. That's why Everway is built around a simple principle. Learn your way. Everway provides digital tools that support personalised learning with consistent access across iPad, Chromebooks and Windows devices, helping students learn in ways that work for them. These are trusted tools shown to improve student reading, writing and understanding by up to 88%. And in exams, Everway helps students feel more confident and independent, while supporting schools to reduce the cost of access arrangements by 60 to 90%. It's practical support for learners and meaningful impact for educators. If you're at BETT 2026, visit the Everway team at stand SK41 to learn more. Everway, learn your way. Hello, Paddy. Welcome to the EdTech podcast at BETT. We are delighted. Not only are you one of our sponsors, Everway, but we are always delighted to have you and talk to you. So tell us a little bit about what's happening at BETT and what you're up to.
Well, we're in day 2 here. It's been a really, really busy BETT. I'm really excited BETT. Plethora of AI, as we would expect, but bit of a different twist on AI, I think, this year than last year, where we've seen a lot about security of AI, how it's more embedded and part of teaching and learning in the tools. And we've been doing that at the Everway stand SK41, where we've been looking at what have we done for the past number of years in terms of inclusion and how do we embed that in. So great vibe, great international visitor presence, lots of people with real meaningful questions this year. And I think what's been interesting this year is this is the biggest EdTech show in the world, but so many people are coming to our stand and talking about Everway tools and asking us real deep teaching and learning questions. And I think it's not just the technical questions anymore. So thankfully this year, we're a little bit past the shiny and we're getting back to practice, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely what I've been hearing from our other guests is that it feels less kind of hype, less kind of concern and fear and that sort of thing, and actually much more around, okay, I've had a play, I've had a test. I now really want to drill down into what does this look like in classroom learning? What does this look like for my students?
Yeah.
So a year ago, you announced the new Everway name, and so all fully branded and ready to launch. So what has been happening with Everway for the last 12 months?
Well, it's been a busy year. I mean, I started talking about AI and how we have started to embed AI tools and functionalities a lot more across the board. And we've had to consider, if you imagine what our major product looks like, read and write, it's a toolbar that sits and supports learners in so many different ways, but there's 27 different ways that a student may choose to use those. So we've got to look at those and say, right, well, how can we make those better for vocabulary acquisition? How can we make those better and more relatable and understandable? And so we've used AI in the background to really support and strengthen the tools we already built. And that's been a major, major focus for us. We've got a new version of Orbano, which is our PDF tool. We've moved that along quite substantially. So we really wanted to focus there not only on support and those support tools that are there, but actually on a consideration of, well, how can we take those support tools and also support students for research, for study, for review, for flashcards, for all of the ways they might want to engage with content. So that's been good. And I suppose the other things for us, we've been known, I suppose, we're very fortunate, Philip, to have millions and millions of users around the world. People look at us and they automatically think about the Chrome browser, or they talk about our Mac desktop, or they talk about our Windows desktop. Very few people would go, I love your iPad app. Because really it was that kind of forgotten cousin that people went, yeah, you've got an iPad up there. We've put an incredible amount of work this year recognizing the importance of iPad in education around the world, not just here in the UK, but everywhere we work. And so we've really strengthened that iPad tool. And it's not just about bringing the AI facilities in. It's about really looking at what should that look like in the classroom? How do we elevate the wonderful accessibility tools that sit there in the platforms and start to think about how we make things more inclusive? So we've got a new read and write iPad app, fabulous tool. We've also built out and just launched at the show a new PDF app. And that's Orbano, and that sits there directly. And those things can be used in the classroom, in exams, and we've built it in such a way that those can be used for any app. So we're not telling a pupil or a student anymore, go there if you want help or support. We're saying, if you're in Book Creator, right? If you're in Pages, if you're in Word, if you're in Docs, there's support there for you, and it's built right into your iPad. So that argument of accessibility and inclusion, we're really trying to join the two this year and say, a lot of students need more, but we need to start somewhere. Start with the inbuilt accessibility tools and build on top of those. And that's been great this year for us. Really excited about what we'll have for the year ahead.
That's incredible. It literally allows for the full suite, which also gives that lifelong ability to utilize those tools.
Yeah,
you're kind of building it in now, and it's forever there for them.
Correct. And I think, Philip, you've worked with us for a number of years. You know what we do in education, and that's where you and I thrive in the world of education. But I think some people forget, Norway as a really large, fortunate to be a really large global organization, we also are really strong in higher education. So this is about, if you can provide a primary level student with a set of support tools that can carry with them through secondary, through their examinations, their high-stake exams, and then they find themselves in university or college, they get access to the same tools. They're familiar, they're consistent. But then what we also have in the company, we have a workplace division. Who knew, right? I mean, I knew obviously, but lots of people
don't.
Understand that neurodiversity or differences don't stop when you leave school or university at all. So you need support when you're in your work environment. And whether you're a teacher, and whether you need supported there, or whether you're doing an admin job, or whether you're doing a complex project management job, or you're a doctor, it doesn't matter what your role is. You're going to use a device.
Yeah.
And if you've relied on these sorts of tools to support and help you throughout your school life, lifelong learning is what it's about. We want to see the kind of models that are adopted in places like Norway. In Norway, it's understood that as a lifelong support that's put in place, neurodiversity doesn't go away. We're not trying to fix anything here. We're just trying to make sure that you are supported. And so we take that literally, as Philippa, but I'm going to say it, cradle to grave, that full journey of life and how you experience work and learning.
And that's so vital. I mean, I remember, so university was when I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I'd gone through my whole school life without anybody realizing. If I had then stopped using accessibility features because I'd left university, I don't think I'd be where I am today. They are things that I utilize and rely upon every single day of my life. And I don't see that as being a bad thing. And I think it's something that we all need to make sure that we recognize. And we're seeing an awful lot more adults being diagnosed and being made more aware of things that they just never been told or supported to understand before. And so these tools are really vital to be able to help them to live as they should be in a very, driven way, and having agency in their own roles and lives that they live as adults.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for us, I'm sure you've heard our motto before, your listeners may not have, but our kind of passion and drive is to help everyone understand and be understood. Very passionate about that mission as a company. And that for us always got to sort of stem from that. Excuse me. How do we help with literacy? How do we support literacy, reading and writing? But if you think about that, that's also about how you communicate, how you articulate, how you do things like this. All of those areas can be helped. The challenge I suppose we see is, and you'll see it from your work and I see it from mine, we're always talking to our schools and our colleges about inclusion. What does it mean? And inclusion means all. It does not mean let's just support that sub-segment. It's about everybody involved. And actually, when you think about that journey of, well, if you're an adult and you move from an education system who kind of gets it and is always growing and understanding their approach to inclusion, quite difficult to go into a workplace where that concept of inclusion that you would have had through your educational journey is not quite understood in the same way. And it can be a barrier. And every way we're always about removing barriers where we can. So our commitment is always to say, right, well, how can we keep those tools the same all the way through?
Absolutely. One really important thing, and I think there's been quite a lot of change in this in the last 12 months as well, is that accessibility arrangements during examinations and things. Tell us a little bit about how Everway can support that with learners.
Yeah, it's really important to us globally, that part, because I think what traditionally has happened for those listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the UK system, what would happen is, for example, if you had dyslexia and you were getting access to a support tool in mainstream class. So you're doing your daily classwork, you get access to a tool like ours, text to speech, or you have immersive reader, or you have accessibility tools built into your iPad or your Mac. The challenge has always been that when you get to your examinations, your high-stake examinations, that at that stage, that support is technically removed. Excuse me again. Too much. It's the BETT voice. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I get home after 3 days of BETT and all I want to do is sit there and my lovely wife says, well, how was BETT? And I go, and that's pretty much as I can say. So sorry about that. But so what happens is that support is technically, in theory, removed because the understanding from our classrooms has always been, right, I now need to provide some support to that student. So I will bring a person. And that person will be the reader of the examination paper. He or she will write the answers because the pupil may not be able to write that. And in the UK now, and JCQ, and then obviously JCQ rules apply on all reaches of the word now. We now are in a situation where we can use a computer. They literally call it a computer. So a computer reader and a dictation tool in exams. And what that means for a student is now they can use a tool like Read and Write throughout the year as their normal way of working. They get into the exam hall. They can put a pair of headphones on and they can have that paper read aloud through computer voice. That helps with confidence. How many times are you going to ask a person, can you please reread that?
Yeah.
Could you do it one more time before you go, I'm too embarrassed? You can ask a computer PC as many times as you want.
Okay.
So those examination requirements are there. They're inbuilt. The International Baccalaureate, IB, Sportos, Cambridge, JCQ. Computer readers and writers are permitted across the board now. And it's really important for us that we show that to as many schools as possible because why should we disadvantage a student who has a normal way of working of all these wonderful tools that are inbuilt and from ourselves? They get to an exam hall. No, you've got to have a person and they're going to help you out. So it's an exciting time and there's always lots of changes. And our job is to make sure that we are always fully compliant. That's always a challenge. Examinations have such strict guidelines that are so tight in their guidelines. We need to make sure that the tools that we're providing there are compliant with JCQ, with IB, that Senkos and ASN leads around the world have all the information they need to apply for those. But ultimately, it's about how can we make sure pupils have support and confidence in it.
Absolutely. And I just think that is such an incredible place to be able to be at where we can offer that to schools and to students to be able to enable that. Because as you say, it's like taking away someone's crutch, and we wouldn't do that.
The thing, you don't know, remove your glasses. Of course, they're listening to this, so I wear glasses. Would they say to me, now on this English lesson, please take your glasses off?
Yeah.
No, they're not going to say that. No. And it's the same thing. Well, you're now in an examination that you've been prepping for the last 2 years, or you're not allowed your support tool.
Yeah.
Well, but we can provide that.
Yeah.
We just need to drive awareness to schools that this is a sensible thing to do. It's the right thing to do for students. And actually, it's economically a whole lot better. And if you imagine, if you've got 30 or 40 children in a year group, and we have some schools we work, for example, in the Middle East, you're sitting with 100 kids who would have access arrangements. Imagine the amount of people you have to recruit, you have to onboard. And here's the thing, you're not allowed to use a person that already knows that pupil because that could put them at an advantage. So you've got to find a person that doesn't know the student. You've then got to train them in exam etiquette and requirement. You've then got to put them in a separate room.
Yes.
The rooming requirements flat are crazy. If you think about computers, we're helping with confidence. We don't need to hire or onboard a lot of staff to do this. We don't need to pay for that. And ultimately, the student gets a more natural exam environment.
Yeah.
You're not in an exam hall with a pair of headphones.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't, look totally isolated from everyone else and, big sign on your head saying, I need help. I think that's amazing. What is the future of 2026? Let's not go too far ahead. We know AI might, totally transform it if we go too far. But Everway for the next 12 months, what are you talking about? What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, we have been involved, I suppose, for the last 4 or 5 years. We've had a lot of acquisitions. We've purchased a lot of companies. And our big challenge now is to make sure that we're bringing all these companies in. I'll give an example. A recent acquisition that's come into the stable just on the 1st of January is a company called product called MindView. That's a mind mapping tool. Powered by AI in the background, really helps us study and research. Off the shelf, not necessarily a very accessible tool. So we'll be taking tools like that and going, how can we integrate that into the family of products that we have? How do we ensure it's fully accessible and that it pursues our mission? So we'll be looking at that. We have some very exciting developments with some AI supportive tools in the background. We've just launched 3 new support tools for workplace to help with things like focus and ADD and ADHD.
Amazing.
We've got some new exams tools coming out later in the year. I'm really excited this year for the product roadmap that we have and how it's really driven about delivering on that mission that I talked about at the start and genuinely focused on listening to our schools around the world, our customer needs. What is it they need?
Yeah.
The challenge with shows like this is there's a lot of shiny. There's nothing wrong with that at times, but actually when you talk to those companies and you say, well, how many teachers did you talk to? How many senior leaders did you talk to about this product? We're being innovative. And that's wonderful to be innovative, but it has to be driven by that teaching and learning, not outcome piece. And so that's why I'm excited this year about, so watch this space is all I'm going to say over the coming 2 and 3 months. There's some really cool stuff coming out.
That sounds incredible. And I love the fact that it is very much bringing it back to, it's a great product, but how do we make it more inclusive? How do we go from universal design for learning? That's amazing. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Paddy, it's been a joy to listen to you and hopefully lots of people will be coming by your stand. Have a great day.
Thank you, Philippa, for having me.
Thanks for listening. That's another conversation from BETT. There's plenty more to come as we continue talking to the voices from across the global EdTech community. Stay with us for more live conversations from the heart of the event.